like a week or two ago, AWS had a glitch or went offline, and a large part of the internet, including a lot of crypto, went down with it.
Yeah, RIO network did not go down. That's why we call it the permanent cloud, or one of the reasons why we call it the permanent cloud, right? So like in the case of Google Drive or iCloud, they can make it really cheap and affordable because they're targeting you in many different ways, from marketing or sales, and trying to get you to spend more on different things.
You're the product.
Yeah, sure. Maybe it's permanent in the sense you keep paying for it and it'll be there, but those costs can go up. Their policies can change. So this decentralized storage network, Arweave, you pay one time to upload your data and then it's there forever.
Hey, Soheil here. Thanks for tuning in. Real quick before we begin, if you enjoyed this episode, if you learned something, please consider to follow or subscribe or share this episode. That helps us out a lot. It helps us to reach more people and to spread quality education across the space about crypto and Web3. Also, if you're part of a crypto project or represent one and you would like to come on the show or do sponsoring, please get in touch with us. And lastly, everything we talk about today is for educational purposes and no financial advice. Enjoy the show. Phil, lovely to have you on the TEACHMEDEFI podcast.
Hey, nice to be here, Soheil.
So before I get to anything else, my original first question in this episode was going to be, what would happen to the internet if AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft all disappeared tomorrow? And just, what was it, like a week or two ago, AWS had a glitch or went offline, and a large part of the internet, including a lot of crypto, went down with it. What a great example of the fragility of our internet, centralization, single points of failure, right? So what were you thinking when all this went down?
Yeah, RIO network did not go down. That's why we call it the permanent cloud, or one of the reasons why we call it the permanent cloud. What was I thinking? I was thinking, oh man, this is a disaster. I can't believe, AWS, it was down for, I don't know, like 10 hours. I think they had another outage yesterday. And I'm thinking, like, I can't believe these small changes or small issues, right? Like they had a problem with, I think, their DNS or something like that. And that rippled to other AWS services. And it happened to be in US East 1, which is like their biggest data center where everyone's using. And we have some of our hosted services in there as well, outside of, or things that connect with the RIO network. So like when this happened, I got the page at 3 a.m. and we're immediately like, okay, is this something with our stuff? No, AWS is down. And we literally couldn't do anything. And it got to the point where, we use other SaaS tools as well, right? For some stuff like documentation. And we couldn't even log into those, right? So it's really telling that the level of centralization that's happening now can have such huge effects across the entire internet, across many countries. And I think that's just one of the drawbacks of this centralization is if it goes down, a lot of things go down with it. And it's just like this rippling effect can really cause chaos. Now, sure, teams could architect better solutions and, if this region's down, you fail over here, there. And, but that also costs more money. And that it just makes it harder to operate if you're planning for these hyperscalers to fail. So it was certainly a rough day, but a really good day for the RIO network. And it's not often we can test those kinds of things, right? Like we can't shut AWS down to ensure other parts of the system are all working. So even though it was like kind of a fire drill, I shared some stats on my Twitter account last week of, some of the network performance. There were still hundreds of millions of requests made, hundreds of terabytes of data streamed. Things were getting uploaded, things are getting indexed, right? The RIO network is kind of like AWS from that sense. It's a network of various cloud services that let you build applications on Arweave, which is a blockchain built for storing data. And the key thing about Arweave is once you upload something to it, it's timestamped, tamper-proof, and it's there permanently. So that's why we call RIO network a permanent cloud network that's built on top of like this primitive storage layer. Maybe kind of similar like AWS, a lot of things are built on S3, right? Their storage platform. So it's like we've kind of taken this permanent storage and built a whole cloud network on top of it, and it's spread around the world with hundreds of nodes. And yeah, maybe some of them might be deployed in AWS, right? I'm sure those had issues, but all the rest of them didn't. And it was good to see things were still functioning and users could still access their data and their apps and pages, because one of the beautiful things about RIO is it's all location independent, right? When you upload something, um, or when you access your domain name on the network, you can go to any of the different gateways and get that same information. It's not a different version of it. It's the same information that you can verify if you want. You can go to that degree and really prove that this is the same data that was uploaded. But it just allows this level of resiliency that you don't get with AWS or GCP or Azure. And it's a level of resiliency that you don't have to pay more for, right? You don't have to do all this disaster recovery or HA planning. You just upload your data. And sure, maybe you want to build your apps in a way, or any backend services or infrastructure, you want to build it in a way that utilizes the network and on our protocols, right? For example, we have one called Wayfinder, which allows you to traverse across the entire network. It's kind of like a load balancer to get your stuff back, right? So as long as you're not pointing to the one gateway that might have been deployed in AWS and is now down, you're going to be able to still access and do all of those things. So yeah, it was a rough day for a huge portion of the internet, but I think it was kind of a shining example for decentralization and open source systems that are permissionless and in our case very easy to deploy. So even if you are someone who is impacted, you could have set up a new gateway in that same time period, because it's just really easy. And yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be more days to come that are like that. You figure that one outage was probably some teams, like their yearly allotted downtime was in that one day. So I'm sure it's made a lot of people, a lot of organizations think about their cloud strategy, and something we've been kind of seeing, in the past couple of years of this push to get out of AWS. And in, some cases, all right, enterprises now installing things back in their own data centers or keeping it on-prem. So it's kind of like the pendulum is swinging. And yeah, we're just in this really good position now. Like if the pendulum swings towards decentralized networks versus keeping all your stuff on premises yourself, yeah, we think we have a really good spot and an enticing use case and value prop for companies, teams, whether Web 2 or Web 3.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's I guess it's one of those things where you don't worry about centralization until something happens, and then you notice it matters. It's kind of crazy to think about. I mean, how dependent the internet is on these specific providers. But clearly, clearly there must be major economies of scale around that for that to happen, right? For the market to rearrange itself like this. So tell me a bit maybe about that as well. Like how can decentralized storage solutions or decentralized competitors compete with those incumbents, I guess?
Yeah, you can maybe look at it from a few different angles. On one perspective, yeah, Web3 or decentralized networks, they're open source and they're permissionless. And by design, in many cases, there's not a moat, right? Anyone could fork the software. So on one hand, you can see that as a negative thing versus AWS. Once you get your data in there, that's their moat. They'll charge you a lot of money to get it out, right? They have all kinds of systems that make it easy to spend more money in there, whether you want to or not. And that's the result of decades of them building things that can scale and meet all these needs and, charge that super premium price. And I think it was this week or last week, I think they just had a big layoff, tens of thousands of employees. And it's crazy to think that they've grown so much over the years. And I think it's because it's such a premium thing. They're charging way more than they have to, from my perspective. So Whereas, sure, these decentralized networks are open source and anyone can deploy it anywhere, right? Like in our case of RIO, we built, we call our nodes gateways. We built it in such a way that you can deploy it anywhere, like in a cloud, like AWS or GCP, or on a server in your house, or on a laptop, or a rack of servers in a data center, bare metal, on a Raspberry Pi, right? It can deploy anywhere. So because it is open, um, you just have this effect of more people have access to it and can deploy it in cheaper regions on cheaper hardware. So, um, yeah, you might get some economies of scale from that perspective. You might have, teams in US or Europe, or, even, for example, South America, maybe some poorer countries have to pay a super high price for using, in-region clouds. Um, you now give them access to resources. They might be further away from them, but resources that could be cheaper. And that money could go back into their pockets or spent on their team, et cetera. So like that's one aspect. Like, because it's open and easier to deploy, you could get this kind of commodity effect across all decentralized networks.
Yeah.
I think.
I guess it's a similar thing with DePIN in general, right? It's like the thesis around decentralized physical infrastructure, but I'm curious about this whole permanence thing. Like when I don't know, when I save files, or anyone else listening to Google Drive or something, I think everyone's kind of expecting that to be permanent, right? So, but you've said we're at an inflection point where Web3 is evolving from temporary systems to permanent ones. So you've said, for example, that AR.io is the internet that remembers. Can you explain what you mean by temporary and permanent? Don't we tend to say, like I said, like the internet is forever anyway?
Yeah. Well, I mean, on one hand, if something is on the internet, at least for me, I'm always expecting like it'll be there, right? Put a YouTube video on, well, maybe someone will download it or copy it somewhere else. Even if you were to take that thing down, like maybe it's still there somewhere else. You don't really know. But it just wasn't designed that way, right? It was designed to be temporary and extractive. And, I've been surfing the web for, I don't know, 2.5 decades. And I've certainly seen many things that I've uploaded a long time ago disappear, old blogs, old pages, not saying that those are high valued things, my high school blog that I have, or my old GeoCities, whatever. But it's clear that the internet doesn't have a memory, and, to maintain that stuff, you have to pay for it, right? Or that data has to be an asset to somebody else, right? So like in the case of Google Drive or iCloud, they can make it really cheap and affordable, because they're doing a whole bunch of other stuff with that data. They're targeting you in many different ways, from marketing or sales, and trying to get you to spend more on different things.
You're the product, right?
You're the product. Yeah. So in the case of Google Drive, for example, like, sure, maybe it's permanent in the sense you keep paying for it and it'll be there. But those costs can go up. Their policies can change. Maybe you want to exit Google Drive and go somewhere else. At least in the case of, maybe this is more iPhone or iCloud, it's really hard to get your stuff out. I've had a nightmare just getting stuff off my phone. I have Windows PCs, and Windows, Microsoft, and Apple just don't get along. So it's just hard to exit those things, and that's all kind of by design. Let alone like censorship, right? That's another thing that, sure, even if you're paying that bill and your data is like, it'll be there, you could get deplatformed, censored. And maybe this now is more on like social networks. There's a lot of things that are happening there. They take away your identity, because that's the other thing that people don't realize, when using these kinds of systems, but your identity is controlled by that platform as well. You have a Gmail account. That's not yours. It might have your name, but Google could delete it. Google has control over that. Facebook, all all various accounts. So I think this is where permanence fits in, right? So permanence of your identity, your cryptographic, your digital identity, and permanence of your data, right? Now, I would say we're not the only network that has permanent data. You look at blockchains in general, you could argue Bitcoin, all the transactions on Bitcoin are permanent, right? Because the nodes have to go through that whole chain to get the current state. Um, and that's by design, right? That the transactions used for monetary needs, right? It's money, right? Digital money. Um, they have to be permanent. But something like Bitcoin was not made for storing data, right? All these financial based blockchains were not made for storing data. There's been a lot of products, teams, whatever, that tried to like jerry rig in things to get it to do that. But maybe this is now going back to a little bit of my story and journey, but in 2018, I discovered this layer one blockchain called Arweave that was built for storing data permanently, similar to Bitcoin. It's a decentralized storage network, and it has that very basic principle or feature of you pay one time to upload your data. The miners, they'll mine it, they'll secure it on the blockchain, and then it's there forever. You don't have to question, oh, will this be there? Or, could it be deleted, or could it be tampered with? Or who uploaded it, right? Because it uses your digital identity to cryptographically sign anything that you upload. And it just creates some fundamental properties different than dragging and dropping a file in Google Drive. And, this platform, Arweave, decentralized storage network, Arweave, was really just for that, storing data. You look at the web today, you look at modern web applications and web pages. Yeah, storing the data is really important, but you need a lot of other things to build. You need like an index or a fast cache so the stuff loads quickly, or a domain name, right? Like imagine if the internet was just working on IP addresses, right? Instead of going to google.com, you have to go to 178.63. Whatever. So it's like we looked at all these other things that that were needed in order to actually build on top of this, unique permanent storage layer, and that's what we put together with the RIO network, and that's again why we call ourselves, a permanent cloud, and we feel like we complement the temporary clouds, or we complement or fit in with the rest of the internet, because honestly, not everything needs to be permanent, right? Not all data, not all sites, pages, whatever need to be that. So we're not trying to replace the internet. Rather, we're trying to give it a memory for all the stuff that matters, whether it's your personal information or the information of another DPIN team or NFTs or, AI memory, right? That's a big kind of topic we've been, exploring. We feel like there's a strong need for all of these things to have this permanence. And yeah, that's what we've been trying to do, and combat those big centralized players who just fundamentally can't give you that, and it's not in their best interest to give you that either.
How does it actually work? Like I assume the data itself, like if you have a large movie file or something, it's not stored on the chain, right? Everyone has to replicate that. Do you store like a commitment on chain, like a hash of the bytecode? How does it actually work?
So maybe let's talk about it from two layers. The storage layer itself. So when you upload a file, you pay a big fee. Part of that goes to the miner to accept the transaction, and then yes, record a hash, or let's just call it a hash on chain, right? And in case of Arweave, right, it's a blockchain, so there's 1,000 transactions per block, but then your data is chunked up, and that's also stored by the miners, because what they have to do in order to mine a block is prove they have access to any of the data associated with those hashes. So they're incentivized to keep as much as they can in order to continue mining. And if they can't prove that access, they can't earn the reward. So that's like one of the fundamental principles of Arweave. And yes, there's this data sharing that goes back and forth between the miners. It's kind of like this tit for tat, kind of like BitTorrent. They're going out to other miners to get data they don't have, and they're sharing that with other miners as well. So now that's just for storing the data and the incentives around that. The RIO network adds an incentive on top for serving that data back out and performing some of the other actions that you might need, like resolving a domain name or indexing or caching that data. And the way our protocol works, we call it the observation and incentive protocol, is basically the gateways observe one another. They're checking different things. If, for example, are you serving this domain name with this app? Are you serving that with a good performance rate? And it's all the hashes are matching up, and I can verify that it's good to go. And they kind of vote on one another. And the gateways that are doing a good job get a reward for that epoch or that day. We kind of reward once a day. So it's an additional incentive on top of just storing it, but serving it out and making it functional for apps and users, et cetera, who are consuming it. And, an important part to mention is all the incentives are working for gateways and Arweave nodes to store and serve it. That doesn't mean that they can't moderate any of that data, right? That's a question we frequently get. Like, what if it's something really bad? Is it going to be there forever? The incentives will incentivize it to be there forever, but any given gateway or Arweave node can say, hey, I don't want to store this. I don't care about any possible reward I can get for this really bad content, whatever that may be. So you still have this kind of democratized content moderation that exists, where again, right now, that content moderation policy might sit with a certain organization to decide. Right now, it's the entire world gets to decide what content is good or bad. And again, the incentive doesn't care. The protocol doesn't care. It just says everything should be permanent. Everything should be served. So it's, an important part of the overall mechanism. I think, you ultimately can't put a gun to people's head and say, you must save this. You must keep it. Like, I don't think you can ever make a system to do that.
Are you making the primitives of Arweave more accessible as well in a way, so it can also compete with those easily usable, convenient AWSs and so on?
Exactly, right. One of those things is we call it the Arweave name system, and it's just a way to assign a human readable name to any piece of data, right? And that data could be a document, a JSON, a database, a full app site, etc. And that came out of the need of, we're uploading stuff where I was sharing some links on LinkedIn, and, I'm sharing a link and it's like arweave.net, one of the gateways, / a long transaction ID, right? Kind of like your wallet address is a long, public key. And I'm like, no one's going to click on this link. They're going to think it's scam, right? They don't know that it's, I think it was like a white paper document or something I was sharing. They don't necessarily know that. And again, it's like if I shared a link to a website by its IP address, you're going to be like, what the heck is this? It's hard to trust a long string of numbers or the hash, right? Versus something you might recognize. It's just kind of how our brains work. So we came up with this Arweave name system, which lets you assign a human readable name to any of that data. So like, for example, we have, our drive, which is our version of Dropbox, but built on Arweave. It's saved on Arweave. It's hosted through RIO gateways. So now the app code is immutable, timestamp, tamper-proof, and permanent. Each version of the app we've ever deployed, you can go to. And you don't have to go to it by arweave.net / some transaction ID. You go rdrive.arweave.net or rdrive.ar.io or rdrive. Any of the 600 plus gateways that are on the network. So you have a friendly name that's also location independent. It's the same app across any of those gateways. That's actually easy to remember and go to and understand. And then you can build trust with like, all right, this is our drive versus some transaction ID. Is that really our drive? Is that like the right version? So that's an example of like one of the systems we built on top of Arweave in order to make it usable, better, discoverable, etc. Again, like it's I don't want to say just a storage network, but it's like if you had a computer and all that was in it was a hard drive. Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah, but like, so is it stored like multiple times? Like, I assume if I want quickly access to a file, and then this provider, this storage provider, goes down, right? Do I still like this scenario of AWS or whatever? Is there? Do you then route to the redundant copy somewhere else provided by some other provider, or how does it work?
So there's maybe two levels to that, we could say. So um, the Arweave miners, they keep that raw data. They're keeping like chunks of data. They're like the backstop, the cold storage. You only want to go to the Arweave miners if you can't find it anywhere else.
Yeah.
And you can kind of crawl the network and do some discovery to find those chunks and then assemble them into your file, your movie, your document, your app, whatever. Above that, let's call it like really cold storage, is the RIO network, right? The RIO network can also cache those chunks. They also cache what we call contiguous files, which is the actual image or document, whatever. And then you would access a gateway, or an RIO gateway, and it'll kind of ask itself a few questions. Do I have this? Do my peers have it? Does an Arweave node have it? Does like an Arweave node that I don't even trust has it? And depending on where it finds that data, it'll go through other things. Like if it goes to an untrusted Arweave node, it'll verify that stuff as well. It'll make sure it's sending out what you're expecting. And then in that process, it'll cache it. So then it, if you hit that same server again, that same gateway again, it's already there. It doesn't have to go anywhere else. So that's where it, gives it better performance, right? Because you don't want to have to spend that time and work to find the stuff, right? And that's where that kind of it acts as a CDN in that regard. And it'll do that whether you're accessing a single file or an entire app. It'll cache all of that locally. So other requests are really fast.
What kind of like adoption are you seeing? Is it more like companies that might want that? Is it more people?
It's storage, it's cloud services. So it's very, very broad use cases. This is actually a good and a bad thing for us, right? Because there's so many verticals that that can use it, and it's been hard for us to drill into some specific ones. I think one of the first strongest use cases was for NFTs, for storing NFT data, right? Not the token itself, right? The tokens are on Ethereum or Solana, but the pictures or the music or movies are stored on Arweave and accessed through.
Sorry, yeah. Phil, isn't that what happened? I mean, I saw a meme of it or a picture, which was, I think that was during the blackout there a few weeks ago. So on not open.
I think it was OpenSea and like
OpenSea is, oh my God, yeah. It's been a few years now for me. I haven't been involved there. So on OpenSea, and then the images were not showing because basically, yeah, the storage of them was down, right? Which goes against the ethos, right? Which is like, I own this, but then it's not really there. I mean,
you really don't. AWS owned it in that case, right? And even if you were to have like, oh, I'm going to right click and download the picture of the ape, like, okay, that's great, but like your NFT, the thing you bought, I don't know, it doesn't work. So that I think was one of and really still is a really strong fit for us, right? And we've had countless teams who've had that exact same thing happen. They get one outage or the creator stops paying the bill or something, and the community gets up in arms. Oh, I can't see my stuff anymore. They migrate over to Arweave. And now that image is accessible through hundreds of of gateways. And we have a protocol, our own routing protocol I mentioned before called Wayfinder. So now, like, if the app is built to use this protocol, that wouldn't even happen because, oh, it detects this one's down, just send the user here. OpenSea actually was one of the first adopters of that, AR:// they weren't, they're not using it in the case of, I think it was like Bored Apes, or I don't know. They weren't using it in that case, but earlier this year, I think Nike, they had a big, their Animus and CloneX NFTs, like these are like $1 million projects. They were using Cloudflare, and the one developer left on the project. There's some issues, and like Cloudflare, stopped serving all the data. And there's like threats of lawsuits, all this stuff, and we help them move it all over to our drive, which is again just an easy way to just upload stuff, because not everyone's a developer, right? Not everyone wants to build their own tools, and yeah, now those NFTs are permanently preserved. So that's definitely one fit, right? And that I would say is, yeah, Web3 teams for NFTs. But when Meta was doing their Instagram NFT platform, they were leveraging, this was before RIO launched, but they were leveraging the uploading services that are now part of the RIO network. So when NFTs were like an enterprise thing, when it was hot, like we were right there with the biggest of them.
You mentioned AI earlier as well. Like, what are some use cases there? I mean, what is it exactly? Is it like chat histories, or you mentioned memory, but like just to understand? And yeah.
Yeah, so you could see it on two fronts, right? The data that goes in, and then the information that comes out. So if you're trying to reproduce an AI's output, you need those same inputs, the same thing that they trained it on. So if you have permanent timestamp tamper-proof data, you can always get that same output if you're training on it, whether that data is real or synthetic, right? If it's made up data, right? If it's permanently preserved, then you'll always be able to train on it, right? And that model itself could also be permanently stored as well. We've seen people uploading LLMs through apps like our drive to ensure that that is timestamp tamper-proof and can always be accessed. And I know there's like Hugging Face and platforms that store LLMs all day, right? But and all of those could come offline. They could be taken down. They could be censored, and so it's another option. But then the outputs of the AI, right? And I've been saying like, oh, you want your AI to have a permanent memory, right? So that's another thing. Like, sure, maybe chat logs could be one thing, but I think the decisions made, right, the audit logs of those decisions, I think that could be really important, especially in the case of AIs that are making really important decisions. And we're not seeing this yet, right? There are some teams like Ocean Protocol or Inference Labs that aren't just storing their data permanently, but they're actually participating in the network because they see the value in like, all right, well, sure, I have this backstop, this network there, but I also want my sovereign access too. So like that's certainly a fit in some cases, but I think in a longer time horizon, like I don't know about you, if there's like doctor AIs or military AI, like I would want all of those outputs and decisions to be public and auditable and, verifiable. Because then it gets really scary where you have like this black box and it's doing things and like, who knows if the team controlling it can clean stuff up to avoid, lawsuits or whatever. So I really think from the context of like safe AI development, like there's certainly a need for the permanent cloud to fit in there. Again, not all information needs to be permanently stored, but I think there is a subset, and it's I think still early days. There's a lot of hype around it, a lot of like Chat GPT wrappers, and yeah, I don't think there's a strong fit there. But yeah, the data coming in, the data coming out, LLMs themselves is something that we've been exploring and trying to push.
Mm. So let's say someone's watching and is wondering, okay, what would I upload, permanently in the next 5 minutes? What might they try uploading first?
Maybe just to quickly answer the question, right? What can you upload anything, a picture, right? Important document. If you're a developer, if you have a little, a front end or a static site or an app, you can upload that. You can give it a domain name, all really easy. You can pay for these uploads with credit card, with Arweave tokens, RIO tokens, Solana, Ethereum on Base. We support all different payment types. We're in the process of integrating X402, which is a new open standard from Coinbase, which really is more around agentic AI payments. So that's been a whirlwind the past couple of weeks. I can maybe just share my screen,
Yeah, sure,
and
let's do it.
I wasn't prepared to give a demo, but I think it should be easy enough where I can show you. Okay, so here's one of our new apps called Turbo. Turbo is one of our hosted solutions built on the RIO network. So it's basically a gateway that we're running at a really high quality of service for enterprises, institutions, and teams that, want something with an SLA and with a team behind it, right? Not everyone might want that, but this is our version. We have other apps like Drive, which are also really easy to use, and it's kind of a Dropbox style app. But for a really quick demo, I just want to show you this. So I'm already logged in. I'm using my Wander wallet, which is an Arweave native wallet. I think you go to like wander.app to get it. But I could have logged in with MetaMask. I could have logged in with, Phantom Wallet. We support Privy.io, which lets you log in with an email address. So it's really easy. My account, I already have some credits. This is what you could use to pay for storage. Again, you could upload directly to Arweave and spend AR tokens and be like full, cypherpunk mode. But we wanted to support all different options and make it easy. So I'm not going to show you the top up flow, but we do have a few different things on here, right? So you can just simply calculate the price of stuff, right? So for 1 gig, it's around $12, right? Or it's around 337 ETH. You can see the different options to pay, or maybe, I only have I want to spend $100, right? Well, you can get around 8 gigs for $100. So easy to understand how much you want to spend. And then maybe let's just upload a file. So let's go here. What is this? This is a 22 meg. Let's try this one. All right, this is a little big. So it's a 22 megabyte image, right? This is actually something I previously downloaded. So it's got some long, ugly name. I'm just going to click upload now. It's going through. Okay, so it finished. So we just have a really simple interface here to show you your previously completed uploads. I'm just going to click on this. And here's what I just uploaded, right? And it's this long transaction ID. And it's, some high resolution picture. But this is, again, hard to remember, hard to share. So I'm going to click on this. So I already purchased some different RNS names. We actually have a separate app where you can do that. It's kind of like GoDaddy, RNS.app, where you can go and buy domain names. I already have a few. What the Turbo app does is it lets me quickly assign them. So I'm going to pick, this name, and I'm going to create an undername, which is a subdomain, and I'm going to put demo pick. Right, here's a little preview, assign domain. Okay, so now, I've assigned a domain name. I have demo pick _ vulnerabilities, right? Now the key thing is I can go to arweave.net, which is another gateway. Demo pick, I can go to vulnerabilities.com. Oops, misspelled there. Let's see if this works. Right, this is a gateway I'm running. I can go to permagate.io. These are all different nodes on. Oh, so okay. In this case, I went to Permagate.io. This is an example of X402 in action, which I was not planning to show. Let's see if I can just do this. I'm going to do, this would be a great demo if I can get this in. So X402, this gateway operator has said, hey, if you want to use my bandwidth, you're going to have to pay. I'm going to have to pay 0.002 cents to look at this. So I'm just going to sign this message here. Come on, will it work? Redirecting. Okay, Permagate. It's going real slow here for them. Again, I didn't mean charging for a slow service. So, I'm not going to come back here. Now, what I could do is go AR colon slash slash. What is it? Demo pick. Maybe I'll end on this one here. So AR colon slash slash is, I mentioned before, it's our Wayfinder protocol. I have an extension here installed called RIO Wayfinder. And what this is going to do is this will route me to a gateway on the network. So I don't have to remember like dot permagate or dot whatever. All I need to remember is my domain name. So in this case, oh, sorry, just redirected me to onk33.online. I don't even know what this gateway is, who's running it, or where. So like in the case of an AWS outage, protocols like AR colon slash slash are essential because it wouldn't have routed me to a gateway that's down in AWS, right? And this is all the same data, the same transaction ID.
Right. So was it automatically routing you?
It did, yeah. It did. So here, let's try it again. Let's do AR colon slash slash. Let's just put Volunarios. This is like my homepage. So, oops, mouse is EYZM.space. So it's bringing me there, right? So this is my Volunarios is my Twitter name. It's my Twitter handle, right? So this is my permanent profile page, right? So this is like really quick and easy to deploy. This was just a single file, but you can deploy entire sites, right? We have a little capture page feature. You can put in a URL to a website and it'll take a screenshot and upload it. You can share credits with friends. You can send a gift of credits, a few different tools. So definitely recommend people trying out the Turbo app as just a really quick, easy way to upload. Files under 100 kilobytes are free, so you don't even have to pay for it if it's really small. And I don't know if this made sense to you, like kind of seeing it in action and how like that location independence of one thing available everywhere.
It's different when you kind of see it to understand. But also, what just happened with the X402 thing? That was interesting as well. You just made a payment through this solution developed by Coinbase, right? Like a stablecoin payment?
A stablecoin payment, yeah, USDC on base. So again, I don't know what's happening with Permagate. I do know this gateway operator, so I'm gonna have a word with them. But basically, gateways have to provide a free level of service, right? If they don't, what I was saying before on this observation incentive protocol, you run the risk of not getting the reward and potentially even getting slashed and losing the stake that you need to apply when you join the network. So gateways have to provide a free service. However, we recognize that bandwidth is not free, right? If you're going to consume a whole lot, you're going to have to pay for it, right? So each gateway, what they can do is they can configure their price for X402, and they can configure what rate limit they have. So if you hit that rate limit, you will get this X402 page that we just saw, and you'll pay in USDC on base, which is really fast, and basically have this kind of micropayment to bump you over the rate limit and continue to access data. And we're looking at applying this same thing to the upload side too, right? So agents can upload with X402. There's an indexing component, which I'm not going to show because that's maybe more boring, but you can do a GraphQL query and pay in X402 if you're, maybe blasting that index to find a lot of data for, some analytics purposes. And we, I'm maybe a little skeptical of A16Z's claim that by 2030 there's going to be $30 trillion of agentic payments. Maybe that'll happen. I don't know, but we're really trying to position ourselves as a permanent cloud network to be very AI forward, right? And if agents aren't going to take over the world, we think there's going to be a high demand for permanent data to both upload it and access it.
Yeah. Okay, so just to sum it up for people also, like, and for me to understand. So basically you're saying like that AI agents can autonomously pay for accessing a file, for example, right?
Exactly. If they're accessing it at mass volume, they could pay. And, sure, I just showed, you can buy credits here. You can already pay for storage. It's just the beauty of X402 is it's an open standard. It's not tied to any specific chain. It's kind of like HTTP or SMTP, whatever. So I think that's like the nice part about it. And that's why we're trying to embrace it, but not go overboard, right? Like it's definitely a hyped up thing at this point, but we do think it could be really powerful. And maybe when some of the dust settles, we'll see some really strong use cases come out of it.
I mean, I've seen some graphs of X402's adoption increasing rapidly, so I definitely got to look into this more. I mean, this was the opposite of some of other things in Web3 sometimes, which are clunky and take a long time to do. And you just did like pretty quickly this stablecoin payment, which happens through this, I don't know, it's like some sort of HTTP request, right?
Pretty much. It tries to request a thing, a resource, and that resource will say like, oh yeah, you're good, or no, here's an X402 HTTP response. And then the app needs to say, or the user, whatever, needs to say, okay, well, I'll pay that. And then you send a standard response back with some of that payment information, and then the server allows you access to the resource. So we built that into the RIO gateways so that any gateway operator can like tune that themselves. And yeah, just kind of make it really easy to consume data, right? Because without stuff like this, then you end up with kind of a mismatched economics, right? Of running the thing, right? Again, it costs money to run a server and to provide bandwidth. And yeah, there's incentives at play to reward gateways for doing that. But if you're downloading petabytes of data, like there's no amount of protocol reward that we can do to just subsidize all of that. So it's, free lane. But then if you're really a power user consuming a lot, I think stuff like X402 will really help.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you for showing it as well. I mean, I will put the links in the show notes as well for anyone to try out. But this is cool. I mean, I've heard of Arweave a lot, and it's cool what you guys are doing, building on top of it. So yeah, I mean, all the best with it, and you're welcome anytime on the show again. Perhaps is there anything specifically coming up or something that you're excited about with the protocol, or?
Well, the X402 stuff is really, I'm glad I just got to show that. We just released it last week. So that has been kind of the big thing for us. We're trying to take that a little bit further by adding it to a few of the other capabilities that a gateway has. We're using that to get a little bit deeper into the base ecosystem. We're going to be at DevConnect in a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks in Argentina. So if anyone wants to stop by and say hi, that'll be awesome. And our big focus is really on growing partnerships, growing usage. We built a lot of technology. We're really interested now more in getting people to use it, getting strong partners, whether that's from a customer perspective, you need to upload a lot of data and access it, or even just from a perspective of we're aligned with similar missions. So interested, if anyone in the audience is if that piques your interest, definitely reach out to. Exploring new little feature ideas as well. I would stay tuned in the future for that. Exploring things like opening up more access to the RIO token, which the network launched earlier this year, but it's still hard to get the token. So that's kind of another path that we're on. So I expect to have some more exciting announcements in that area. Maybe even consider doing a bridge to other ecosystems as well to, again, just make it more accessible. But yeah, my DMs are always open. If anyone is interested in seeing another demo or talking about permanent cloud or any of that stuff, just hit me up on Twitter. Valenarios is my name, and would love to talk with you.
Sweet. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thank you. It's really cool.